I've asked Mikey J to come up and read something for us before we get started.
Mike, alcoholic.
Hey, Mike.
If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can He now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. When ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me the strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have then completed step 7. Thank you.
All right, please help me welcome Chad P.
Hi everybody, my name is Chad Payne, I'm alcoholic. Teddy, thank you. Thanks for having us out. And it's an honor to get to come here. It's an honor to get to be around enthusiasts. I love to be around people that love to come to these kind of things, because not everybody in AA does. I think there are a lot of us out there that are like, what? All day long, speakers talking about the steps. Just shoot me now. But some of us fall in love with these steps. Some of us really do fall in love. Some people work the steps and they're just pretty good and rocking along. And I think the people who really, really fall in love with the steps are those of us who have to continue to work the steps well into sobriety. In my experience, those are the people. Those are my people. Those are people that really fall in love with this work. Because we see that there's so much more to offer than just what they do to get us sober and keep us sober. There's so much more available. All you guys who put this thing on, thank you for what you do. After this thing's over, I'm going to stand up here and people are going to shake my hand and talk about how well they might. They have in the past. We'll see. I'll be jumping the gun a little bit there, but that happens sometimes. And sometimes I think we ought to have the organizers for these things, ought to stand up here and get their hands shaking, So anybody that's had anything to do with putting this on, thank you for what you do. Bringing people together and getting this message out there is a big deal. I really realized that one time we were doing some Zoom talks in Russia, and we had translators, and there was a woman named Anastasia who had kind of put it together and gotten translators together, and I was like, wow, what an amazing service. And then guess who got thanked? Me. All I did was just show up and talk and then rest for a second so it could be translated and then talk again. I'm like, I did nothing, So really thanks for doing this work to get the and I tell you, I don't just like to come talk. I love being a part of these things and listening to people talk about the steps. And I love listening to the how-to, Some people in AA are preachers, and some are teachers, and some are storytellers. And what I love to hear is the how-to, So you're going to get some how I do this in this talk. And not everybody likes that. And one time I was going somewhere to speak, and my sponsor, Charlie, I was talking to him about it, and I said, Charlie, they asked me to kind of leave the technical stuff out and just talk about my experience. And he said, well, Chad, that's not really your talk. And I said, I know, that's just not really what I do. And he said, well, if they don't like it, they won't ask you back. I said, that's why I love you. I've been sober since April the 2nd of 2003, which means 22 years in a couple weeks, right? Sometimes I just don't feel like I live up to 20 plus years of sobriety. Seems like a lot of responsibility. Julie and I are now part of a group with a lot of young people, and I'm an old timer there. What? Like, how did that happen? And I just don't feel qualified to be an elder statesman. And there are times where I'm in a conversation with some people, and it's the kind of group that has a lot of different forms of inappropriate humor all over the place. We got a little group chat thing, little thread on WhatsApp, and some of the stuff that comes off on there, it's like, whoa, that's You know, and then I'll be in a conversation and suddenly I'll have this, I'll think for a second, I think I'm the guy that's supposed to be bringing this up, not bringing it down, you know, which is usually what I'm doing. So yeah, my home group's the Rule 62 group in Asbury Park. It's a new group. Julie and I got involved after it had been going a few months, and I think it had like 15 people a year ago, and now it's got we had like 110 there last Thursday, and we had like 40 people counting days. You know, when everybody introduces themselves, and we're like, after everybody that's counting days, it was like, let's say the Lord's Prayer and get out of here. You know, it's really a cool thing to be a part of. A lot of enthusiasm and a lot of fun. And I've got a sponsor here in New Jersey now. You'll hear me talk a lot about my sponsor, Charlie. Charlie Parker was my sponsor for about 15 years, and he died almost 2 years ago now. And that all happened in Austin, Texas. And I fell in love with a Jersey girl who, if you hang around till 8 o'clock tonight, you'll see her up here. And she drugged me back to New Jersey, you know, and I'm glad to be where I'm at. We have a lot of fun, you know. We're close to her family, and we get to be an aunt and uncle to 5 nieces and nephews that are 2, 4, 4, 6, and 6, and they are in love with their Aunt Julie, and they like me pretty well too. So we have a good time with them. Okay, I'm going to tell you just a little bit of my story. I've had a realization, and let's just call it a theory, because I don't even be right. I don't even know if this is true. But I know that I didn't think that I had any sort of a difficult childhood until I went to therapy, well into sobriety, and then my therapist had me, it was group therapy. There's a whole story to how I got into group therapy, but anyway, I'm in this men's group, and the therapist had me do my life story in like in bullet points or something, and then kind of share it with the group. And one of the guys, there was a playwright, he goes, God, I would love to write a play about your life. And she said, Chad, you did not have an easy childhood. And I didn't really, but you know, there was some trauma there, some trauma. That's a word we use a lot now, a lot of trauma. But I don't think that it was the trauma that turned me into that created the spiritual malady that I have. I think it was that I'm very sensitive to trauma, maybe. You know, because I had some things like, you know, with a divorce. You know, there's a divorce. Lots of people go on and live very successful lives whose parents are divorced. Not me. You know, it screwed me up. And I seem to see it. And the reason I'm talking about that now, anytime I get up here, the thing I want to make clear is what makes me an alcoholic is 2 things that have been so well said over and over. And I'm not going to spend any time on them, really, because it's, you know, you guys, if you've been listening, you got it by now. I mean, I can't control my drinking once I start. And then when it's time to quit, I can't stay stopped. But there's another part of alcoholism that's also been well talked about, but it applies to my talk much more. And it's that spiritual malady. And a spiritual malady doesn't mean there's anything wrong with my spirit. That's not what that means. It means that there's a lack of awareness of spirit. That's ultimately kind of what it comes down to. And as the reason that I talk about this childhood stuff, I'm not really even going to get into it. It's boring. It's not even that bad. But I do come from a family of alcoholism, and just the quickest way I can put it is, in the beginning it was a lot of fun, then there was a lot of chaos and drama, and it got pretty bad. But today, 5 out of 6 of us are in recovery, you know, for something, which is cool. You know, that's pretty cool. I mean, it makes for some interesting dinner conversations. You know, like we get in my family, a lot of times the conversations are the kind of conversations we have in AA. You know, we get pretty transparent and joke about some things that other people don't really, you know, have a big sense of humor about. We can laugh about because we've recovered from a lot of that stuff. But getting there was rough. You know, getting to a place where 5 out of 6 are in recovery is pretty rough. So during that time, during my childhood, I developed a set of old ideas and a set of character defects that I walked into AA with. Let me just be honest, that I walked into this room with. You know, because not all that stuff is gone, and the bulk of it I don't even think I've discovered yet. So it's not that anything happened to me in my childhood that made me alcoholic, but my recovery is based on a spiritual solution to a spiritual malady. See, I have a physical allergy and a mental obsession, and if that's how we attacked alcoholism, we would attack the physical allergy by learning how to control your drinking. We would have strategies here on how to control your drinking, how to manage your drinking. Do it this way, drink beer, not liquor, all that kind of stuff that doesn't work for us. But then we also have this mental obsession, this mental condition. I love this. If you're mentally ill, if you're in here and you say you're alcoholic, guess what? You have a mental illness. And that's a much bigger problem than this physical allergy. And if that's where we attacked alcoholism, what we would do is talk about strategies on how to stop. Which ironically is sometimes the thing you might hear in an AA meeting. For instance, avoid people, places, and things. Anybody ever heard that in a meeting? That works really well, unless you're alcoholic. It's like that time my mom said to me, she said, "Chad, I've been telling you for years to stay away from those people, and I finally realized you are those people." Damn, Mom, when Mom's not on my side, what do I got left? No, the reason the spiritual malady is so important is because that's where we attack alcoholism. We attack a spiritual malady with a spiritual solution. And then we straighten out mentally and physically in the process, And what that means is we lose the obsession. We lose this obsession to drink, and we're restored to sanity. It's not that we all of a sudden don't want to drink, though that does happen for many of us. Sometimes suddenly, sometimes it takes a while. I think Dr. Bob, it took 2.5 years before he kind of lost that desire to drink, but that does happen. And then if that happens, then the physical allergies doesn't matter. If we don't pick up a drink, so. And from what I've seen around me, that one kind of sticks around. Nobody really gets rid of that one. I haven't seen a whole lot of people leave AA, take a drink, and then just control it. Seems to get worse, but where I really want to start my story is and this will apply to later, is I had my first big surrender to alcohol a few years before I got sober. What happened is I had a bad wreck and I broke a bunch of bones, and it took them a while to get me out of the truck, and they flew me in a helicopter to Tulsa. This was in Oklahoma, to Tulsa, to a hospital, and I spent a month and a half in the hospital. The point I'm trying to get, it was a bad deal. And I'd pushed my family out of my life in many different ways and avoided them and run away from them. And my big dysfunctional alcoholic family, I mean, like if you ask me how many brothers and sisters do you have, Chad, how many brothers and sisters do you have? I don't know, man. It's a tough question. Coming from my family, I don't know who counts and who doesn't. Are we talking steps, halves, adopted? Because I got them all, and some of them double up. Right now, my step adopted sister is with my parents as we speak. That's kind of one time I was telling a story to somebody, and I said, "Yeah, my sister's brother died in a tragic car accident when he was 14." And the person I was telling it to said, "That is terrible. Isn't your sister's brother your brother?" Well, now that you say it, I suppose. Never really thought of him that way. So this big dysfunctional family shows up. One time in the hospital room, my dad's there with his wife and my stepmom and my mom. Like, damn, Dad, you're killing it there. You got your wife and 2 ex-wives in the room at the same time. And when that all happened, I'd been trying to kind of manage the drinking, get things under control, get some things together, and drugs were a big part of that too. And that, it was just a big mess. And I would try to kind of get some things going, and it never really worked out. And they were falling apart, and it was getting worse and worse. And kind of came to the point where it's like, okay, I'm just going to have to give this up altogether. I'm just going to have to, do this clean and sober thing. And I felt like this is a good place to start over, and so did my family, and everybody kind of showed up, and I made that commitment, to them, and just like you said, Sarah, I just love the way you describe all that, and I can feel it. I can feel it again, the way you describe it, and you don't ever think that you doing step one is a gift for us. It's a gift for everybody listening, because it brings that back, and it automatically brings the hope in, what's available here. And what I come back to so often, and what Charlie would say to me so often, he's like, I'm like, I got this problem, it just won't seem to go away. And he's like, Chad, if the fact that you're sitting here sober today means that's an easy one for God. If he can do the sober thing, it's a shoe-in, So I make this firm commitment that I'm not going to do this anymore. And I'm looking at my dad now, and he's got tears in his eyes. I've never seen him cry. It's really uncomfortable. And, and I'm crying, and like, I'm done. I'm never going to. And, I get out of the hospital, and I'm on a walker. My jaws are wired shut. And I think I had maybe a broken pelvis, broken hip, like a torn rotator cuff, which, considering all the other injuries, wasn't a big deal at all. And I last 2 days. Within 2 days, I'm on a walker. My jaws are wired shut. I haven't even graduated to crutches yet. And 2 days later, I'm staying out all night, drinking whiskey and smoking meth off tinfoil. I never went back to the doctor, never made it back. You spend a month and a half in the hospital, there's a follow-up visit required. Had a bunch of staples in my hip. That's okay, I got them. Needle nose pliers, no problem. You think that's bad though? That's not bad. My jaws were wired shut. And I want to say this again, I never went back to the doctor. Do you know what that means? That means I got that out. Yeah, I got that out. Okay, I'm just going to tell you how. It's too good a story. I was supposed to have him for 6 weeks. About 5 weeks later, I'm like, this is ridiculous, man. I got to eat something. And bought this little set of different kinds of pliers, and I probably stole them from Walmart. I didn't buy anything from Walmart. I stole stuff. Probably stole them. And they have a restitution department, by the way, if anybody doesn't know that. Anybody owes them that. Home Depot, Walmart, grocery stores. But you don't get to go in and pay back the manager. They just send it to the restitution. There's no glory in it whatsoever. They won't let you send a check either. It's got to be a money order. I don't know why. So I've got this little set of pliers, and I'm at me and a couple of my little tweaker buddies, we're at this party, and it's like a regular party. Like people are like probably playing beer pong or something, I don't know. And I wasn't a regular party kind of guy by this time. I was in the beginning, I was a regular party kind of guy. I was like the life of the party. By the end, here's what it looks like. I'm in the bathroom mirror, the sink's full of blood. I've got these different kinds of little wire cutters and needle nose pliers, digging the wire, because they go up into your gums after they've been in there a while. So I'm pulling all this stuff out, bleeding for like 2 or 3 hours. Somebody will open the bathroom door and they're like, whoa, and they're out, back to the party. And one of my buddies is going to help me. Some of the stuff that they're wanting is mine that night, so they've got to hang with me. They'd really much rather go do something else than watch me do this. You ever been stuck in that spot? I have. And he's going to sharpen the pliers for me. So these pliers I'm using to cut these wires, they no longer meet up like this. Now they're like, there's a big gap in them where he's screaming like, man, you messed up my pliers. I'm trying to cut these wires out. And it's just such a mess. There you go. That's my life. And that's why, that's why I kept quitting, because things they were just ugly, things were bad. And that's kind of the funny stuff, but I had a daughter involved in this, I had a daughter involved in it, and I kept meaning to go home, and I would tell people that her mother wouldn't let me see her, and that wasn't true. I would have been in trouble if I'd have gone home, but she wasn't keeping me from my daughter, but I would sure tell people that, and I had plenty of opportunities, and I just couldn't quite make it happen. I couldn't quite get there, and the problem with being at home is I couldn't get loaded at home, And then what happened pretty quickly is I didn't have a home, and I kept quitting. You know, my first surrender to alcohol looked like I quit. And then I couldn't stay stopped, so I quit again and I quit again, and then came the quitting years. You know, quitting over and over and over with every good reason to quit and a firm resolution, as the book calls it, to stop, and I just couldn't stay stopped. I kept changing my mind. Right? I kept changing my mind. And the craziest thing that I do as an alcoholic is pick up the first drink after all that happened before. It's the craziest thing I do. But the thing that might be just as crazy, or maybe even a little crazier, is when I do that, I convince myself that I chose to do it. You know, I convinced myself that I chose to do it. I chose to pick up that drink. I never had a choice. Never, it's just a matter of time. You know. They did an intervention on me. My mom, I said 5 out of 6 of us in recovery. Mom was the Al-Anon, and this was before her Al-Anon days, and she organized this intervention. She's pretty slick, you know. She got word to me, because she couldn't find me, but she got word to me that I had a paycheck, that I could pick it up at her office. I hadn't had a job in years. Just by chance that there was a check. I mean, I really needed the money, you know. And I walked in, and I knew when I walked in, I saw they were all sitting in a circle and they're folding chairs. And it was a bunch of people that shouldn't be in the same room, you know, friends and family that didn't belong all there together. And I knew something was up. And I'm not the kind of guy, I knew nothing about recovery when I got sober. Nothing. I'd heard jokes about going to rehab. That's it. I knew nothing about what AA was or what treatment was or any of that. I didn't know anybody who had gotten sober and come back. We just didn't have that. I come from the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, and we just didn't have people there getting sober that I knew of. If they did, they didn't come back. I didn't either. I mean, I understand, you know. I didn't know anything about it, but I knew something was wrong with these people sitting in this circle of chairs. And I remember the first thought I had. Any of you guys ever been part of an intervention? Anybody ever done that? Anybody ever? It's tough. It's a hard thing to do. You have to write these letters, and it's somebody that you love and you want to kill at the same time, you know. And you're mad, but you want to, you know, show them, convince them they need help by telling them how you've affected them. But then they also don't want to scare you off, you know, and they're just terrified. Is this going to work? Is he going to ever speak to me again? Or is he, you know, what's going to happen? Is he going to go kill himself? Who knows? You know, it's just so scary. And the first thought when I saw him sitting there and kind of realized what was going on is, how could they do this to me? How could they do this to me? And that's the level of self-centeredness that I brought in there. That's the level of self-centeredness I brought into AA. And I guess the question that I have for you is, do you think that level of self-centeredness goes away if you take the alcohol away from me? It gets worse. It gets worse. I'll tell you why. Because when I'm drinking, as long as I can drink, I don't really care. That's the gift alcohol gave me. I cared a lot about me, and then I drank. I didn't really care. Before I drank, I was really concerned over whether or not I fit in. I was really concerned with whether or not you liked me. I was really concerned with, am I good enough? All that stuff concerned me a lot. And then when I drank, it's not that I felt like I fit in, it's that I didn't care. It's not that I thought you liked me, it's that I didn't care if you liked me. That's the closest thing to a spiritual experience I'd ever known. You know? That's what alcohol gave me. And what happens is I get sober, you take the alcohol away, and I become very concerned about the details of my life all over again, except now it's way worse. You know, and I believe that's why most of us have a period of sobriety early on where we're just so darn grateful that the obsession has been lifted. And we do this stuff and we get these gifts and maybe the gifts, you know, a lot of times in the very beginning, the gifts are all just internal, you know. We don't have much of a life going on. I made my first sober job, I worked for an AA painter and made $8 an hour. I lived with a roommate, and we had a hole in the ceiling, and it was a rough place to live, and we were both single, and we didn't want to be. Anybody experience that in sobriety? Girls are scary. Whew. What if they don't like me? Oh no. And life was great. It was great. And then the gratitude for no longer having the obsession to drink begins to fade. And now I start to look around and think, man, I'm getting a raw deal. This is not the life I wanted to live. And the gratitude starts to go, and I don't have that sense that everything is okay, and a lot of things are wrong now. And that's when we talk about this second surrender, what we begin to experience is the struggles that come along with living a life on the basis of self-will. And I've taken many new guys through the third step out of our book, and then later through the inventory process and through steps 6 and 7. And I think when we're brand new, there's just no way that it's going to be very deep, because at that point the surrender is to alcohol. And then now, over the last, quite a few years, I spend much more time working with guys that have been sober a while. And it's when we experience the failure of self-will and sobriety that especially steps 3 and 6 and 7, really begin to come alive. And I think it really takes that failure of self-will and sobriety for most of us. Maybe not all of us. I don't know. I've kind of been running on this theory here lately that there's like the Dr. Bob types and the Bill Wilson types in AA. And I've had a couple people correct me on this, so if you feel the need to correct me, it's okay. Go ahead. I was reading, though. Let me just read this to you. See if I can find the right pages here. Let's read Dr. Bob's experience in early sobriety. It's a most wonderful blessing to be relieved of the terrible curse with which I was afflicted. My health is good, and I have regained my self-respect and the respect of my colleagues. My home life is ideal, and my business is as good as can be expected in these uncertain times. You rock on, Dr. Bob. What's Bill say? Bill says, it was fortunate for my old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. I was not too well at the time and was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. It sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. You get the idea. And Bill went through some trauma early in life. I mean, we were there with Devin. We were there at the Wilson house, and you realize that Bill was born behind the bar in a hotel. And then his mom left, and then his dad left, and he was raised by his grandparents, and then he fell in love in high school. He was an awkward kid, and he found love in high school. And she just died. She just died. He came back to school after some sort of summer vacation or Christmas vacation or something. He comes back to school, and the principal says, "Oh yeah, she died." Bill went through some stuff that kind of messed him up. And I've been reading some of the 20 plus years. I'm finally reading this stuff. I'm reading AA Comes of Age and Pass It On, and I'm reading this stuff, and I'm reading about Bill, and I mean, Bill struggled. He really did, and some of us come in here and we work the steps, and we have a spiritual awakening, and we start carrying the message, and we stay consistent in prayer and meditation, and we get married, and we have babies, and we buy a house, and we live a happy life. And then there's the rest of us. We come in, we work the steps, we have a spiritual awakening, we start carrying this message, and it's game on. Let's get a girlfriend. Here come the character defects. Let's make a little money or not have a little, whatever it may be. Here we go. And these steps to me are so much more powerful in sobriety even than they are in the beginning, which sounds weird, since this program is called Alcoholics Anonymous, and I really thought it was for the drinking problem, and it is, but it's so much more. So they got me to go to this little treatment center, and they caught me at a really bad time, and and I was willing to do anything at the time. I really didn't have anywhere to go, and God timed it pretty well. He's good at that. So I end up in this treatment center, and they take me to meetings, and they introduce me to you. And I had no idea about you. Like I said, I'd never been to any kind of a meeting or anything. I didn't have experience with any of this stuff. And it was, I found my people. I knew that I'd found some people that I could really, relate to, and were having a good time. And I thought you guys were weird. I thought I was cooler than you. That's so wrong. I'm so not cool. But I thought I was cooler than you guys. But there was something that attracted me to you, and what it was is that you were having fun. And I don't remember ever in my life having that kind of fun. I remember having alcohol-induced fun. But I don't remember, even in childhood, having the kind of fun that you guys were having. That was so attractive to me. And I would hear your stories and think, damn, I'm going to, have to really embellish on my stories to get up to your level, which I'm willing to do. I mean, I don't know what they told me to do in that. We did some weird stuff in that treatment center. But they told me to go to meetings, and I did that. I got out and I went to a lot of meetings, and I got involved, and I got in the middle, and I became as good an AA member as I could be with absolutely no spiritual program in my life, which really sounds silly when I say it out loud. But I mean, I was chairing meetings, and I was cleaning out ashtrays, and I was making coffee, and I was, hanging out before I was showing up early and staying late, hanging out with all my sober friends, and I was on all the committees. Nobody needed me on a damn committee. I know that for sure. I had a lot of ideas. I didn't even know there were such a thing as the 12 traditions, but I was involved. I was doing all this stuff, and I stayed sick. I stayed sober and I stayed sick. I was sober and sick, and what happened for me is about a year into that, I got real sick of AA, and I mean, it didn't happen all at once. It was happening over time, and that's just what I'm talking about. The gratitude that I'm sober now was wearing off, and you guys were bugging me. And I was tired of hearing the same old stuff you would say in meetings. Everybody's laughing at this story this guy told. Well, I've heard the story before, and he needs to get a new story. And like this guy's going to talk about, I don't have any experience with that, therefore it doesn't apply to me, so what do I care? And I need that. I need the relief that comes in hearing good stuff at a meeting, so I can make it home, go to bed, and get through another day, and then make it to another meeting. Right? And that's what my life was about. And I'd kind of, through that, I was about tired of it. I kind of made a semi-conscious, semi-unconscious decision to quit. And which was a really bad idea, because I saw people quit in AA a lot and it didn't go well. But for, how it is, that kind of, it talks about this threadbare idea. Like that was in here somewhere, but it wasn't enough. I couldn't really hear it that well through all the other voices that were giving me good reasons to go. You've been sober almost a year, Chad. You don't need this. You're doing good these days. You'd have a lot more time to pursue other important things if you didn't do all this AA. And then I met this guy, and this guy had moved from Las Vegas into Oklahoma City, and he was at his first meeting, and I was well-trained. I did my job. I'm going to go, talk to him 5 or 10 minutes after the meeting and kind of welcome him and introduce him to a couple of people, and then go hang out with my friends. And that 5 or 10 minute conversation turned into a 2-hour conversation on the front steps of that clubhouse where he saved my life. He 12-stepped me. He 12-stepped me a year into sobriety. He explained to me what was wrong with me using his experience. I put that up against my experience, and I realized that I'm in big trouble. And I had no idea. I mean, I had an idea, but like I say, it was back here. He just shined a light on it. Because I knew what he was saying was true. I didn't want to believe him, but I could not believe him. Because I already knew. And as I'm sitting there thinking, God, I mean, what's going through my mind is I got to do these stupid meetings forever. This is it? And is it just going to keep getting worse? And that's when he says to me, after he lets me suffer for a minute, he says, Chad, I think I know what you need. Great, Dave, what do I need? He said, I think you need a spiritual awakening as a result of the 12 steps. And I thought that was pretty profound. He probably said it 100 times before. And And we embarked on this journey of working the steps, you know, and it was perfect timing for me. God knows how to put it right at the point where I'm beat up enough to listen, right before it's too late. But I still got an option. I still don't have to listen. I could have walked away from that. I've walked away from a lot of other good advice, but I want to fast forward a little bit and tell you a little bit of my experience in Texas before I get into these steps, because that has a lot to do with it. I've got about 5 years sober, and I moved down to Austin, Texas, and I find myself in the middle of some AA that I didn't know was a big deal, but looking back on it, it was a pretty big deal. I find myself down there as a new member of the Primary Purpose Group in Austin, Texas, and I've got Charlie as a sponsor, hanging out with Charlie and Katie, and then Charlie has a meeting at his house, and Mark Houston comes to that meeting, and that's why he started it. And Mark talks to Charlie and his sponsees, and I get to be one of those guys. And I didn't know that was special. There's a lot of special things going on in AA, and that was one of them. And I didn't even know that. Looking back on it, I mean, I could tear up now if I let myself do it, you know. But I mean, God really put me where I needed to be, and I didn't want to be in Austin, Texas. I moved down there because I had a sponsor kind of, you know, I don't know, shame me into going, because my daughter was moving down there with her mother and her stepdad, and I was going to go down there to, you know, help out and try to make, you know, as part of my amends and help, you know, raise her. And I didn't want to be there because after all, I had friends in Oklahoma, you know, sober friends. It's not fair. I have to leave my sober friends. Like, I got a lot going on, you know. We go to the movies on the weekend. Who am I going to go to the Waffle House with after the meeting? Yeah, I'm feeling sorry for myself, and as I'm feeling sorry for myself for being there, God plops me right in the middle of something that is going to completely change my life, revolutionize my recovery. And as I'm there, I learned some things, and one of the things that I learned is the greatest gift I can ever give an alcoholic walking in here trying to figure out what's wrong with them and how to get sober, and that is a clear explanation of alcoholism. I know how to use my experience to explain alcoholism in a way that he can lay it up against his experience and realize that he's hopeless. Not share my experience, strength, and hope. That's what I'm doing up here right now. But when I'm 12-stepping that guy, I want to share hopelessness. I want him going, oh, no. Same way Dave did with me. Oh, no, I'm screwed. You know. And that's the greatest gift that was ever given to me, and it's the greatest gift I can give somebody. You know. A fatal dose of alcoholism is what Charlie would call it. I learned some other stuff too. Mark would talk a lot. If you ever, I forget sometimes to do this. The reason I say Mark Houston's name there is because if you've never listened to a recording of Mark Houston, just give it a shot. You can find him anywhere that has speakers. You know, you might hate him. I mean, I talk to somebody like, I hate that guy. I'm like, I understand, but you might not. I've also talked to a lot of people that are like, wow, I had no idea that's what's available in AA. You know. He would talk a lot about the disciplines of steps 10 and 11, which Devin's going to talk about here in a little while. And he kept calling them strict spiritual disciplines. How deep do you want to go? How free do you want to be? And he taught us the importance of actually doing this like you want to do it, like you love it, like you really can get something out of it. Like, not just as this is what AA says I have to do, so I'm going to read the 24-hour-a-day book, say third step prayer, and head out the door. Like, let's actually try to grow a practice here, a spiritual practice. If you want to live a spiritual life, you've got to have a spiritual practice, you know. And I want to be a spiritual guy and do nothing. Is that too much to ask? And get my way. I learned about carrying this message, and nobody does it better than Julie, who will talk about that tonight. You guys got to hang around for that. I know it gets late, but that's one of the first things I ever admired about Julie. Julie was how she carried this message and helped so many people, and she still does it today. They taught me that it was my job, if I want to carry this message, if I want to experience the benefits of this program, get your butt out there and do it. Quit waiting around in your home group for somebody to ask you to sponsor them. That's why you have 5 years and you have one sponsee. You know, it's like, this seems like an unfair attack. Remember, Katie told me, if you have 5 years, you should have 10 sponsees. I was like, that seems a little dramatic. But I can tell you that those nudges that I got from them to go out and get sponsees, I went on a mission, a complete ego-driven mission to get sponsees. And I know 100% it was ego-driven because I wanted to have a much better answer for that question. Next time she said, how many sponsees do you have, Chad? I was damn sure going to be able to say 10. Maybe more. I went on a mission and I started sponsoring a bunch of guys, taking guys through the steps, carrying the message in treatment centers and jails and institutions and that kind of thing, and found a purpose in life, a whole new purpose in life. And I started to develop this weird thing that I hear spiritual people talk about called compassion. I didn't even know what that was. But it's available even for a self-centered guy like me through getting out and actively carrying this message and taking an interest in the lives of others. Less of an interest in my life, more an interest in the life of others. And what a gift that is. But some of the big things that I learned about that I didn't understand at all were, one of those things was what it is that blocks me. And here's what I mean by that. I think I might have talked about this last year, so I'll try to do it kind of fast this time. But we were at a meditation retreat a couple summers ago, and I had a kind of a sudden spiritual experience. I've had a spiritual awakening in AA, but mine have always been and continue to have, but they're more the gradual kind, that's talked about in the spirit in Appendix 2 in the big book. That is Appendix 2, right? Did I say that right? Okay, good. The spiritual experience appendix. And on this retreat, I had kind of this sudden thing. We did this walking meditation. We're about 1,900 people at this retreat. And we're doing all these weird, super intense meditations with loud music and talking. It's like you imagine a football coach guiding you through a meditation. That's what it was like. I was like, come on! Like, this is not how you're supposed to be like, it's okay. Whatever you're feeling is okay. It's not like that at all. Focus! Anyway, we're doing this walking meditation, and I had this experience, and I don't know, man. Everything just was kind of released, and everything just suddenly became okay. And I've got tears running down my face, and it went on for a few days, and it kind of slowly faded. But I mean, everything was okay. I mean, that's the best way I can describe a spiritual experience, and from my experience, is that everything's just okay. And there are so many of these promises in the book that do such a good job of describing this. Being alone at perfect peace and ease. I mean, sometimes we can blow right by that, but I mean, that's a big deal. Perfect peace and ease. How about, being in a crowd at perfect peace and ease? Where's that promise? What step is that? Feeling the nearness of my Creator. Losing fear. Every step, the promises mention something about losing fear. Feeling this new power, peace of mind, all these kind of things. What a gift that is, and that's what I was experiencing at that meditation retreat. It's like I had this sense of wholeness, and I'd heard about that before, but I didn't know what it meant. And what I understand today is what that means is I don't need anything different than what it is right now. I don't need anything. I know I got everything I need, and I know the world's just fine. That's wholeness, and that's a cool thing to experience. I was experiencing love, not for somebody, from somebody, just love in general. Just felt like love, I was experiencing gratitude. Again, not for anything. It wasn't because I made a gratitude list. I just felt grateful for whatever it is. Nothing had changed. I just felt grateful. And then I had a couple of thoughts, and this is the point to all this. The point is this. I had a couple of thoughts come. One thought was, this is probably going to fade. This is going to fade after a period of time. And then the next thought was, okay, what is it that I have to do? Because I'm willing to do whatever it takes to remove whatever it is blocking me from being like this all the time. I see what the goal is. Now I see the goal. This is where I want to be. I want to be free. I want everything to be just fine the way that it is. And that's what these steps are about. AA is not a program of doing things in a sense. It's a program of undoing things. All these steps are about undoing what it is that's blocking me from wholeness. undoing whatever it is that's blocking me from a constant state of gratitude and love, undoing whatever blocks me from experiencing compassion for those around me, undoing whatever it is that makes me feel disconnected, separate. I'm very much, no, I'm not. That's not true. There's a better way of saying this. My mind is very agnostic, atheist, and my experience shows that as I work these steps and selfishness goes down, God consciousness goes up, whether I believe in it or not. It's automatic. It's like a set of scales. And it's the reverse is true too. No matter how much spiritual work that I've done, no matter how many spiritual experiences I've had, no matter how many people that I've helped, as self-will goes up, God consciousness goes down. And it's kind of a floating thing for me day in and day out, Now there is something behind all that, where I know that there's something else available. It's not that hopeless sense of there's no way this is ever going to get better. But in the moment, that's how it works for me. And so what happens is a guy like me works these steps and has an experience with a God he doesn't even believe in. And the funny thing is I don't know if you guys can relate to this. I'm having an experience with God. I'm still not going to talk about it because I don't want to be wrong. I've really been banking on this idea that there is no God, and you guys that believe in God are idiots. Yeah. And that just keeps happening over and over. And it still happens today. I've got a mind today, almost 22 years sober, I got a mind today that tells me some things that are... Well, I'll just give you an example. It kind of as it relates to the first 3 steps. I got a mind that tells me, come on, Chad, you don't need help not to drink. You've got a choice. That's what my mind tells me today. It tells me you've got a choice. You can do this on your own power. My mind also tells me, and this is how it talks to me, come on, Chad, there's no God. It's just stuff people talk about to feel better. But here's the one that really gets me, and how this relates to the 3rd step, is that this idea that external circumstances won't fix my internal condition. That my internal condition seems so strongly to me to be based on what's going on out here. That's what my mind tells me, and that's not true. My external circumstances are always a reflection of my internal condition. My mind cannot grasp that. It can't grasp that. So what do I do then? What do I have to do? Well, I can't be dependent on my mind. If my mind is the highest level of consciousness that I have available to me, that's where I live. I don't need you. I can handle not drinking. There is no God. And I need to arrange all this so I feel better. That's where I live. So what do I do then? That's my best thinking. Well, then what I've got to do is I've got to transcend this level of consciousness into another level of consciousness, to God consciousness, and that's where I am. Sometimes I get mixed up and I talk about my spirit. It's not my spirit. I am spirit. It's my mind, my body. But I lose touch with that. That's what it means to be asleep. Spiritually asleep doesn't mean my spirit is asleep. It means I'm not aware that that's who I am. So when we look at, then the first step tells me what's wrong with me. I have alcoholism, a hopeless, progressive, fatal illness. The second step says there is a solution, it's a spiritual experience. And the third step says I can't have one because I'm blocked. And what blocks me is my attempt to arrange life in a way to suit me. I know how life's got to go. It's not the way God has it going. I know how it's got to go. To blame life is to blame God. Because life is God's will. There it is. So what I do to make sure that I get my way is over time, and I don't even know this is happening, I develop a set of tools on that I use to get my way. And I build these walls to protect me, to keep me safe and protected. And the book has a term for those tools that I use and those walls that I build. The book calls them character defects. And I never really got this calling them character defects. I thought that meant that it's not that there's something wrong. It's interesting here, it says, the book asked me if I'm ready for these things to be removed. This is such a funny part of the book to me. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Yes, for sure. Can He now take them all, every one? Yeah. Take them. If we still cling to something, we will not. What? What are you talking about? I don't have to ask God to help me be willing. Take them. I don't want them. That's not true. I need them. I need these character defects because the most important thing to me in the world is making sure I get my way. That's it. That's number one. That's what it always comes down to. I've got to get my way. And getting my way, what that usually means is I don't have to experience any discomfort or any inconvenience. Certainly not any pain. These character defects are not problems, they're solutions. These are my solutions. They're how I function in life. And the first one I ever that I remember really trying to take a look at and seeing this, having this experience with it, was lying. It's just simple, Lying's messing things up, man. I'm embarrassing myself. People don't trust me. Anybody ever tell one of those stories about something that happened, just didn't happen to me? You guys ever told that story? I need lying. I need lying. I need lying to get out of trouble. I need lying to make sure that you like me. I need dishonesty in my life. I need that. Another big one that came up for me early in our relationship, we fought a lot. Julie and I were fighters. I don't know. Anybody in here have fights in relationships in sobriety? Okay. Yeah, we fought quite a bit. And it usually looked like this. There's something she had a problem with, and I would try to help her understand that it wasn't a problem. I'm not laughing. Okay? I don't know what's wrong with them. These people have a twisted sense of humor. So I would calmly help her understand how it wasn't a problem, and she wouldn't hear me. So I would say it again. I'd add a couple of, a little different language, raise my voice a little bit, repeat myself. And she still wouldn't agree. And, I love that we can laugh about this stuff, but it's really tragic. Next thing you know, I'm throwing something across the room and she's terrified. So a character defect that I'm looking at is rage. And she's upset, she's crying, and if you're 5'2", 130 pounds, I'm intimidating. And I take advantage of that. And that's one of those things that have been talked about today that I certainly, I'm not proud of, but I'm willing to say it up here in front of everybody because I know I'm in the right room. I know that most people in this room have some sort of experience, either, doing that or experiencing that in one way or another, as so many other things, and I'm walking down the road trying to cool off and hating myself and thinking, God, I got to call my sponsor about this again. I do not want to do this, and I'm going to have to probably write inventory, and then I'm going to have to make amends, and she's wrong, not me. It sucks. And I'm feeling all that shame and that guilt and that fear and not wanting to go back in the house and how am I going to face this and all that stuff. I want this gone. But what I found out later is that I actually need it. I need it. That's how I shut down an uncomfortable conversation. That'll shut down an uncomfortable conversation. And this is a character defect because at one time in my life this worked. And now I want to have a successful relationship. It's not working anymore. To give that stuff up is a true measure of God reliance. To be able to say, okay, God, I'll stop lying if you'll make sure I'm okay, even if they don't like me. God, I'll stop the rage and intimidation if you'll make sure I'm okay sitting through a really uncomfortable conversation and not getting it to go my way. To me, that's what God Reliance in this program really looks like. It looks like tearing down the walls. Safe and protected is not my job anymore. That's God's job. I don't need these walls anymore. I don't need these tools to get things to go my way. That's okay. God Reliance looks like I'm going to give up all my tools. I'm going to give up my ammo. I'm going to stop trying to arrange life to suit me. I'm going to tear down the walls and just open myself up completely and trust that God's going to make sure I'm okay. My first sponsor told me when he quit smoking, I was trying to quit smoking. He said, I made a deal with God. The deal was, God, I won't pick up another cigarette if you'll make sure I'm okay without them. And that's how I look at character defects. But then the part comes in, the tricky part, because it turns out, just like alcohol, that when I surrender to a character defect, I'm actually powerless over it. So what we're faced with is management versus surrender. Do I want to manage character defects or do I want to surrender them? And the truth is, I want to manage them until they become so objectionable and I'm in so much pain that I'm finally willing to surrender them, and it's totally unfair because then I surrender it and I still can't stop. I still can't stop. Doesn't that sound like alcohol? Is that the same experience we had? Yeah. So what do? What's the answer then? If I want my life to change, I have to change. My life can't change if I don't change, period. If I don't change, I'm going to experience the same life, different faces, different names, same people. Different places, same situations. My life will never change unless I change, and I can't change me. God changes me. The removal of character defects is not my job. That's God's job. So what's my job? My job is to place myself in a position to be changed. And how do I do that? I write the inventory. I read it to somebody. I get completely honest with somebody. I take this stuff to God. I humbly bring this stuff to God. Do you know what it means to humbly bring this to God? What that means, to humbly bring it to God, is that I can't change it. That's why I'm asking you. That's humbly bringing it to God. Then what do? The biggest act of humility that an alcoholic like me can ever do is go clean up the wreckage that I've caused with my character defects. Bring some humility into this. I don't know of a lot of character defects that are going to get removed if I don't go clean up the wreckage that was caused by them. And then I bring this stuff into 10 and 11. Now, when Devin talks about watching in step 10, I know what to watch for because I've written inventory. I've got current inventory. I know what I'm watching for. I don't want to get too heavy and too personal here, but I will tell you one of the things I'm watching for, just for your reassurance, Julie, I'm watching for passive-aggressive comments to the woman that I love. I'm still saying them. I'm watching for them and I'm putting them in my review, because I have current stuff that I'm looking at. And that's what I try to do. I try to keep this stuff current. It's not near as bad as some of the things I was doing before. The passive-aggressive comment's not near as bad as breaking something in the kitchen, yelling at the top of my lungs, but I still want to grow. And she still wants me to grow. And that's how we grow. We use life as a vehicle for growth. Life brings me challenges. Brings me challenges all the time. The book says above everything we must be rid of this selfishness. We must or it kills us. It doesn't say above everything we must stop drinking, and it doesn't say above everything we must find a relationship with God. It says above everything we must be rid of this selfishness. And how does that happen? We get chances all the time in life. The book says avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery, but if trouble comes, which it will, especially if you're a Bill Wilson type, or Chad Payne type. But if trouble comes, cheerfully capitalize it as an opportunity to demonstrate His omnipotence. That means take advantage of the challenges that I'm given in life. They're gifts. I made a deal in the third step. That deal was God will provide what I need if I stay close to Him and perform His work well. Life provides what I need to grow. I don't have to create problems, which I do. Life will bring them to me, and they're usually self-created anyway. But they're my chance. I have a chance to grow. These challenges come my way. And they're the gift, they're the opportunity for me to let go of whatever it is that's blocking me from experiencing God all the time. It's my chance to let go of something by doing the work, by writing the inventory, reading it to somebody, doing the 10th step, whatever it takes, getting out of my, cleaning this stuff up, going out and carrying the message. All this stuff that we do, it's my chance. These things come at me on a regular basis, and they're my opportunity to get well, to heal. But you know what I call them? I call them problems. They look like problems. But they're not, they're the gift. If somebody would have told me that when I took the third step, I'd have been like, no thanks. They're coming anyway, though. Life's always going to give me opportunities. And the question is, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to practice these principles? Or am I going to arrange it in a way that keeps me safe and protected? You know, that's the question I'm faced with. If they would have told me when I came in here, Chad, you can do this work, or we'll give you a pill that not only will keep you sober, but you won't even want to drink, I would have said, give me the pill. Thank God that there's not a pill. Because I had no idea what's available for me in this program by doing the work that's outlined in this book. Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you in 15 minutes.